Say the word fat and immediately there's a sense of defeat, doom, and I want, but I just can't have. I'm hoping today we leave here enlightened, unencumbered, and we can eat without fear while also feeling a bit satiated and maybe a bit of relief.
I can absolutely relate, Lori. Fat has been demonized for years, and yet it is so essential for our health. We need it for energy. We need it to protect our organs. It's essential for brain health and brain function. Our reproductive organs, hormones rather, depend on fat, cholesterol in particular. We need it to absorb vital nutrients and vitamins. And it also keeps us fuller longer, which means our blood sugar stays balanced, we don't get the energy dips, and we don't get the cravings, which means in the long run, we ultimately eat less.
Amen. Good to hear. So why are people so afraid of fat then, Jillian?
You know, it's a good question. There are a number of reasons, but two come to mind. First of all, there was a very flawed study, a really well-known flawed study that was done in the late 1950s, and it went on for decades and decades. And this study started the whole low-fat craze. It's since been disproven on many levels, but the negative effects of that are still lingering with us. Secondly, fat does have a bit of a challenge. And that is there are more calories per grams of fat than there are with proteins and carbohydrates. So we actually do need to be a little bit careful when it comes to fats.
That's a 70-year hangover on that data, which is a long time, but it's liberating to have the fat. So thanks for that. And can you please break fat down a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got overall saturated fats and unsaturated fats. And then under the umbrella of unsaturated, we have mono and polyunsaturated fats. We all know saturated fats are the animal fats. They also include, though, coconut oil, palm oil, and lard. So saturated fats have been demonized for years, the saturated fats in particular, for causing heart disease, for clogging our arteries, et cetera, et cetera. There's actually a big debate going on now within the nutritional science realm as to whether that's actually true or not. Not only that, there are some saturated fats that are actually nutritional powerhouses. Eggs, for one, are really good for us, and yet they have been vilified for years. What we do know is that there are a number of unhealthy saturated and unsaturated fats actually that are included in processed foods, fast foods, prepared foods, and a lot of the store-bought baked products. And this is really where so many of the problems lie. Manufacturers tend to use very poor quality oils because they're really cheap to make these products. And a lot of these fats are very inflammatory. So we need to be really vigilant when we buy these types of foods. We need to minimize them as best we can. And when we do buy them, because we all do on certain occasions, then we want to read the labels.
Yeah, I get that. And there's this theme around kind of managing inflammation, which I totally get, and this ongoing debate with nutrition in general about there's so much conflicting information. You know, it's hard to know what to eat and what not to eat, and if so, are you doing the right thing day by day? And so could you break down for us, if you don't mind, Jillian, how much should we actually be eating? If we know it's good for us, give us the goods.
Yeah, so the WHO says that we should be having 10% or less of our calories from saturated fat per day. The American Heart Association, on the other hand, says it should be less than 6% or less. So to put that into perspective, that would mean if we have 2,000 calories a day, we would be getting anywhere from 13 grams to 22 grams, or about 120 to 200 calories of saturated fat. And if you look at the slide, you can see that depending on what we eat, that adds up pretty darn quickly. And if you look at Haagen-Dazs, I'm only talking half a cup there. And honestly, who can stop at half a cup? I definitely cannot. And finally, with respect to saturated fat, one small word of caution with respect to coconut oil. 1 tablespoon of coconut oil, and you are almost at the max of the American Heart Association limit. Also, coconut oil is not necessarily the darling fat that it used to be. So I'm not saying don't eat it. I'm just saying go easy on it.
Yeah, and so speaking of oils, what about olive oil and what about avocados? We always hear how healthy they are for us. And what I'm being told is, always use olive oil when you're cooking. So how can we understand the role that they play in our fat consumption?
It's true. These are always talked about it. So olive oil and avocados are under the umbrella of monounsaturated fats. And these are considered the healthy fats, along with things like peanut butter and cashews and almonds and pistachios and other nuts and seeds and some oils. Avocados and olive oil in particular have amazing health benefits above and beyond the benefits of being a fat. But with respect to them being monounsaturated fats, along with nuts and seeds, they are able to do they have a number of different benefits, including weight loss. They can decrease inflammation. They can help prevent heart disease. They can actually even lower our cholesterol levels.
That's amazing. It's a superfood in a way. And you say they can help with weight loss. So, I'd suggest eating as many avocados as possible, apart from the fact that they're a fortune now in this day and age. Can I eat as many as I want, or is there some cap on that to potentially lose weight?
Sadly, there is a cap. There is a cap on that, especially with avocados. But it's sort of three main reasons for that. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So, and especially with avocados, which are quite high in fat, even though it's a good fat. So we really do have to be careful there. Number two, we always want to gauge how much fat we're eating during the course of a day. And sort of then we can make a call at that point in terms of how many avocados we want to eat. And finally, fat affects everybody differently. So we need to have a good understanding of how fat affects us both inside and outside. Overall, though, with respect to monounsaturated fats, ideally we want to have 15 to 20% of our daily calories from them. Rather, though, than getting caught up in the numbers and the calories, what I really want everyone to do is to think more about balance and to think about how these foods actually affect us. Because each one of the macronutrients, the proteins, the carbs, and the fats, everybody is affected differently. So how is your digestion affected after eating certain foods? What about your energy levels? Do you feel full after foods or certain foods, or are you hungry really quickly? Are there certain foods that actually make you feel really lousy after eating them? We truly need to increase our awareness of food and how different foods make us feel. Bottom line, monounsaturated fats are really good for us and they have a number of health benefits. So if you're worried, you might want to consider substituting some of your saturated fats for monounsaturated fats.
I love that theme of just sort of reading your body. It's a great guide to tell you what it is that makes sense for you personally. And, one thing I wonder a lot about is omega-3 fats and kind of where they fit in. And I tend to take mine in liquid form each day as part of my supplement routine. It doesn't taste all the best, but I've heard it's really great for you, so I do it. And is it essential? I heard also that it's essential to carry lutein through your body, but is omega-3 oil a good idea? And is it a good way to consume these fats?
It is a really great idea, and it's also a really great question. Omega-3s are critical for our body. Especially when it comes to women and brain health. So omega-3s and omega-6s are they're under the umbrella of polyunsaturated fats, and they include a number of different nuts and seeds and plant oils. And I'm actually going to touch on plant oils in a little bit, just towards the end. So with respect to omega-6s and omega-3s, they are considered essential fatty acids. And that's because our body needs them, but we can't make them. We have to get them from food. Omega-6s, we always tend to get enough of. It's omega-3s where we tend to fall short. The reason we want omega-3s is because it's got 2 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, which are powerful anti-inflammatories. So what do they do for us? They can lower our blood pressure, lower our triglyceride levels. They help improve our blood vessel function. They enhance our cognition and a whole host of other benefits. Where do we get them from? I think by now we all know that we get them from cold water fatty fish. Think salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring, even tuna, we can get them from. Now, with me saying that, I'm sure there are a lot of you that are thinking, wait a second, I can get my omega-3s from flaxseed and from chia seeds and walnuts and hemp seeds. Yes and no. These foods, which in themselves are nutritional powerhouses, you absolutely want to eat them or keep eating them. But they do have an omega-3. It's called ALA, and ALA needs to be converted in our body into EPA and DHA. And unfortunately, that conversion process is not very efficient, which means if you aren't eating 1 to 2 servings of fatty fish a week, you might want to consider supplementing with either fish oil or algae oil, especially if you are a woman over the age of 50 years old. As well, a number of studies have been done saying that these oils also might help with perimenopause symptoms. So definitely worth a try.
You're speaking right to my wheelhouse. So thank you for that great advice. And you also mentioned that you wanted to educate us a little on plant oils and the role that they play in this whole system of managing fat. Enlighten us. Love to hear it.
Yes, so there are many cooking oils. So when I say cooking oils or plant oils, I think canola, soy, corn, safflower, sunflower, peanut oil. I think I've got them all. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them are really highly processed using chemical solvents, using deodorizers, and using bleaches. By the time they hit the shelves, not only do they not have any nutritional value, they can also be quite inflammatory. So you really want to stick to cold pressed oils or olive oil. And just one final note with respect to these cooking oils, they are prevalent everywhere. So when I talked about the processed foods and prepared foods, et cetera, you have to read your labels there. Even things as random as dried fruits. So again, read your labels. And one more thing, just remembered, nuts and seeds. You always want to eat them raw because again, when they're roasted, these oils are used.
Perfect. Great advice. And so quick summary, just so we can take it all in. If I have it correct, there's certain fats that we need to embrace and keep us healthy and energized. And they include monosaturated fats, olive oil, avocados, seeds, and nuts and seeds raw, as you mentioned, and polyunsaturated fats, which also contain many nuts and seeds and certain oils. And then thirdly, fatty fish, or possibly supplementation for our omega-3s, which are really essential. And we don't need to avoid saturated fats per your advice, thank goodness. But we do need to pay attention to how much we're eating and kind of read our bodies in the process to see how we feel, to make sure we've got the right amount and cut back where necessary. Make sense?
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And if we focus on whole foods, then we have much more control of what we're putting in our body and how much we're putting in our body. And from there, we can determine which foods are working for us and which foods are not working for us, and then adjust things accordingly.
Brilliant as ever. Jillian, thank you. I feel dinner already.
Thanks, Lori.